Europe tsunami warning. Navy drills for a mega-quake that could wipe out Mediterranean coasts. Ollie Smith Express UK reports it's not just the west coast that has been inundated by earthquakes, it's also Italy, Greece, Turkey. Now Italy has had a tremendous amount of volcanic activity lately. Stromboli is erupting, Etna is smoking, and Greece is really shaking with 4 and 5 magnitude quakes. Of course, that comes from the Turkey part of it, the subduction zone as well. We know that we are in a subduction zone. We just had a 5 magnitude earthquake in southern Crete, and we know that we are in a region of seismic activity. The convergence of the African plate with respect to the Eurasian plate along this complex plate boundary, that's what gives rise, of course, to Italy volcanoes as well. And it's in this area of this closing of the ancient Tethys Sea. It's closing in the Mediterranean because the African plate is smashing in northwards. And the remnant of the Tethys Sea is now the Mediterranean Sea. Highest rates of seismicity are found along the Hellenic subduction zone of southern Greece, which is, of course, along basically the island of Crete and along the North Anatolian fault zone of western Turkey and the Calabrian subduction zone of southern Italy. That's where we have our Stromboli, Etna, and Vesuvius volcanoes. Now, after the latest quake in Athens, for example, a couple of weeks ago, the 5.1, and that was downgraded to a 4.4. They said that that's a remnant of what happened, the 7 magnitude quake from 20 years ago. I disagree with them because it's found that we had an aftershock of 4 quakes about a week later. That is in a totally different fault line. But anyway, we'll go by what the Greek geologists say. We're in an area that has now just reawakened, which is not at all a very good sign. We are in this closed basin of the Mediterranean, and we have an area where we can have a tsunami. We have had tsunamis in the past. And they're drilling. There's not much they could do about this, of course. Now with the 5.1, that was 5.5 actually, that was downgraded to 5.1. We had a blackout. We had no internet. There were areas that had no electricity, but for hours we had no internet, no phone coverage, and you can imagine what would happen in a bigger quake. So a European tsunami warning, they're drilling for it, drilling and expecting a mega-quake. Now Europe is preparing for this 7 magnitude quake with concerns that a doomsday mega-quake could unleash a tsunami in the Mediterranean areas where we have, of course, tourist hotspots. And they're hotspots basically all year round because of the mild weather. Europe is on the alert for the shock mega-quake with warnings that a tsunami could also strike the Mediterranean in just 15 minutes warning. 15 minutes. 10 leading navies carried out the surprising 4-day Mighty Waves drill. 10 navies. They're intending to prepare European countries for earthquake tsunami disaster. Forces from Israel, US, France, and Greece took part in this doomsday drill, and this was taking place in Israel's Haifa port that responded to the simulated 7 magnitude earthquake. In the simulation scenario, the earthquake struck northern Israel, and thousands would have been devastated, knocking out infrastructure. And during the exercises, the forces simulated extracting wounded civilians from the sea for treatment, transferring humanitarian aid. Representatives of 7 other navies took part as observers. On average, a severe tsunami hits the Mediterranean once every 100 years. And Israel's coast suffers one on average every 250 years. The shock 2016 report from Israel's Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee's Home Front Readiness Subcommittee states that if Israel were to be struck by a 7.5 magnitude earthquake, an estimated 7,000 people would lose their lives and another 8,600 injured. European countries lead the Intergovernmental Coordination Group for the Tsunami Early Warning and Mitigation System in the northeastern Atlantic, the Mediterranean, and the connected seas. Part of the system, countries have more than 20 minutes to evacuate its populations the moment an earthquake happens in Crete or Greece. The threat of a European Mega-Quake follows the warning that the southern Atlantic coast of Spain is under threat of being wiped out by a tsunami. Well, we know what's off the coast of Spain. It's the Canary Islands, which belong to Spain, and all of them are volcanic islands, and they do have seismic activity. Now, regions such as the south of Spain, east of the Mediterranean, actively seismic, putting them at risk of tsunamis. Ignacio Aguirre, an expert on natural risks at the Environmental Hydraulics Institute of Cantabria, said, "We don't pay the necessary attention to areas that are threatened by the probability of tsunamis such as southern Spain." The researcher warned that cities like Huelva and Cadiz need an emergency plan put in place. In the worst case scenario, a tsunami could strike Cadiz and Huelva in just 15 minutes warning. The last earthquake in Spain took place in 1969 and 2003 in the Balearic Islands, and we know that just today we had a 5 magnitude quake off southern Crete, and just last month Athens was rattled by a 5.1 magnitude quake that was downgraded by 5.5. We had an aftershock of 4.6 a couple of days after. The 5.5 is what caused the blackout of communications and internet, cell phone, etc. Now, concerning the tsunamis that I'm looking at USGS reading from, the large earthquakes throughout the Mediterranean region, also known to produce significant damaging tsunamis. One of the more prominent historical earthquakes within the region is the Lisbon earthquake, November 1st, 1755, whose magnitude has been estimated from non-instrumental data to be around 8 magnitude, which is huge. The 1755 Lisbon earthquake, thought to have occurred within or near the Azores-Gibraltar transfer fault, which defines the boundary between African and Eurasian plates off the west coast of Morocco and Portugal. The earthquake is notable for both large death toll, about 60,000 people they estimate, and for generating a tsunami that swept up the Portuguese coast, inundating coastal villages and Lisbon. The earthquake of 8 magnitude, about 8 magnitude near Sicily in 1693, generated a large tsunami wave that destroyed numerous towns along Sicily's east coast, and then a magnitude 7.2, December 28, 1908, Messina earthquake, the deadliest documented European earthquake, combined several severe ground shaking and local tsunami, causing an estimated 60 to 120,000 fatalities. So we do have these drills going on, and they have mapped the area of the tsunami that would threaten a total of 130 million and destroying holiday destinations. That's the least of it, of course. Piranka Mogul of Express UK, this was a few years back. A tsunami in the Mediterranean would affect 130 million people, wiping out huge swaths of coastal holiday destinations. This is according to the simulated research. And we know that, all the old continents in the Mediterranean, from antiquity, where they're all on the coasts, on the sea coast, for communications, for shipping, for fishery, for everything, basically. Scientists, and they've been there since then, scientists developed a model to simulate the effects of the phenomena, and they found that a large tsunami, which occurs on average once a century in the Mediterranean, would leave 3.5 square meters of Crete underwater. Southern Italy and Greece would be flooded, and the whole region, including North Africa and Turkey, would be vulnerable to giant waves caused by these earthquakes. The study was published in Ocean Science Journal, and explained that the risk was to human life in the Mediterranean coastal areas. It would be high because of the high population density on the coasts. Also, the tsunami waves in the Mediterranean would need to travel a very short distance before hitting the coasts, giving unsuspected coastal dwellers, of course, very little advance warning because the distances are so small. Though not as frequent as the Pacific and Indian Oceans, around 10% of tsunamis occur in the Mediterranean, mainly due to earthquakes generated when the African plate slides underneath the Eurasian plate. The area has devastation caused by the huge waves. In 365 AD, a tsunami was generated by the clustering of earthquakes off the coast of Crete, the largest of which had a magnitude 8 and 8.5. The tsunami destroyed ancient cities in Greece, Italy, and Egypt. Some 5,000 people in Alexandria, Egypt alone, had lost their lives from that quake. As we know, Crete is just across from Egypt, from the Nile Delta. Now, the tsunami destroyed ancient cities in Greece, Italy, Egypt, as we said, and more recently, in 1908, an earthquake of magnitude 7 hit the Messina region in Italy, causing a tsunami, killing thousands, waves exceeding 10 meters in height. That's over 30 feet high. Over 30 feet high. And you have a map here showing you what a Greek earthquake did, the tsunami that was raised, and inland devastation of 20 meters height, which is 60 feet. So that's quite a lot, going all the way in for hundreds of miles. Not how hundreds of miles, I would say, what it says here, 4 kilometers, 8 kilometers depth, the elevation of 60 feet. The same thing for Italy, for the Sicily elevations. Now, in their bid to discover the impact of another earthquake giant tsunami, the teams developed computer models to represent how tsunamis in the Mediterranean would hit the coasts using information about the seafloor depth, the shorelines, and the topography. They then applied their models to tsunamis generated by earthquakes of approximately 7 magnitude off the coasts of eastern Sicily and southern Crete. And in both cases, the tsunamis would inundate the low-lying coastal areas of approximately 5 meters above sea level. 5 times 3, at least 15 feet high. That's what? A 2-story building, definitely. It would be underwater. Thankfully, this indication of destruction is just a simulation. The researchers hope that the results will help governments to identify and protect vulnerable areas. Well, I know, because I live in Greece, I know a lot of the houses, in Greece, in the islands, and also even around Athens, they're actually built on the coast. Actually, you have the coast, right? You have the beach, then you have a tiny little slither of what's called a road, and you have right across the road, right, that may be 6 to 8 feet of, a garden, and then you have the main door of the house right on there. So, what is it? Are you what? You're about 30 feet from the water, So, all these houses would, of course, be inundated, would be swept into the sea. That has happened before with just winter waves, Just plain winter storms have swept houses into the sea without being a tsunami. Now, Dr. Samaras says the main gap in relevant knowledge in tsunami modeling is what happens when tsunami waves approach the near shore and run inland. The near shore is a zone where waves transform, becoming steeper and changing their propagation direction as they propagate over shallow water close to the shore. So you can imagine they get bigger when they're close to the shore. He said we simulate tsunami generation by introducing earthquake-generated displacements at either the seabed or the surface. The model then simulates how these disturbances, the tsunami waves, propagate and are transformed as they reach the near shore and inundate coastal areas. Although the simulated earthquake-induced tsunamis are not small, there has been a recorded history of significantly larger events in terms of earthquake magnitude and main shock areas taking place in the region. Dr. Samaras also says, he warns, that is, that an even larger earthquake could result in significantly more damage. Well, that's just common sense. He added, due to the complexity of studied phenomena, one should not arbitrarily extend the validity of the presented results by assuming that a tsunami would be with a magnitude at generation 5 times larger, for example, would result in an inundated area 5 times larger. It's reasonable, however, to consider such results as indicative of how different areas in each region would be affected by larger events. He says our simulations could be used to help public authorities and policymakers create a comprehensive database of tsunami scenarios in the Mediterranean, identifying vulnerable coastal regions for each scenario and properly plan their defense. There's no way you can plan the defense. I'll tell you why. What are you going to do? Go and tell people to take down their homes so that there would be nobody living on the coasts? Have you seen Venice? Have you seen other areas that are, like Santorini? I don't know, various little Greek islands and various Italian coastlines. The houses are right on the coastline. What are you going to do? Tell these people to destroy their homes and give them areas inland to build new homes? They're not going to do that. They've been there for centuries. So how are you going to protect them? I have no idea. It's nice to have these drills, but I have no idea how you're going to protect them. Maybe for the future developments, you shouldn't allow them to be on the coast, but, people like to have their homes right on the seafront. That's just one thing that they love. They love to hear the noise, the sounds of the waves, and just to look at it. It's very nice nice place to meditate and just contemplate on life in general. Anyway, I'll leave links below for you for this. The thing is that we do have an uptick worldwide in earthquakes and volcanic activity, and it looks like the earthquakes are increasing in intensity, not just in frequency, but also in intensity. So we have to be very aware and alert. Now, all right, we have these joint Navy earthquake tsunami drills. I don't understand what they can do concerning this. What do they aim to do? Just basically, I guess, pick up people living near the coastlines. What are they supposed to be doing, these people? Navy drills. I don't understand what that means. Moving people, I don't understand what that means. Well, how does it would be another thing if you had emergency services on land. But what would the Navy be doing with all these people? That's very strange to me. It's another thing having these emergency service, the people with the dogs trying to find people, trying to, I guess maybe they feel that people will be swept into the sea. Maybe that's the logic behind all this. Picking up people that would be swept into the sea by these tsunamis. Okay, well, that sounds logical. I'll leave links below for you for this. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.